Hello, welcome back to the Murakami Companion podcast, a show inspired by the works of Haruki Murakami, where we analyze his body of work in its entirety. Today we'll be talking about The Elephant Vanishes, a 17 short story compilation from the early 90s. As always, spoilers for some of the short stories in the book. This is the first book of short stories that we'll talk about in the podcast, and we're going without a very clear idea on how to talk about this. I will start by saying all of Murakami's collections of short stories, if they were a music record, they will be a concept album. The ones he has released so far, The Elephant Vanishes, Men Without Women, After the Quake, Blind Willow, Sleeping Woman, and First Person Singular, all of them have one concept that glues all the stories together. The Elephant Vanishes, in particular, has a concept that seems to be stories that have a lesson, but we get to that lesson in all the wrong ways. The book starts up strong with a story that is actually the basis for the first chapter of a very well-known Murakami novel, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, called The Wind-Up Bird and Tuesday's Woman. After that, we go with a favorite, the second bakery attack. In this story, a married couple suffers from hunger they cannot satisfy, and the wife discovers that the husband had a frustrated robbery attempt at a bakery in his youth. The wife has the hypothesis that having that goal unfinished since his youth left a hole in him, and that causes the hunger, which he has transmitted to her when he married her. So she proposes to rob a bakery, and they jump to the car and search for a bakery in the middle of the night. The only thing they find is a McDonald's, which they do rob, but only the bread. In the end, they escape, they eat the bread, and the hunger is finally gone. The story teaches that we should deal with any incompleted business in our lives, which is actually a recurring theme in Murakami's work and a great lesson, but it explains it using crime as an example, and with characters that are terrible people. As I said before, we get to the lesson in all the wrong ways. And by the way, there is a great deal of humor in some stories. The second bakery attack is actually very funny. There's a very good story called Barn Burning, which seems to teach us that we should be really careful with who do we bring into our lives. With a character that does not learn the lesson, does not think much about the events, and it's very frustrating. And that frustration with him not learning the lesson marks that lesson for us. I want to stop in the shortest story in all of Murakami's body of work, and that is The Little Green Monster. This is a story about a woman who is in her backyard where a little green monster appears. He can read her mind and she can read his. There's no secrets between them, but she is scared of him, even though he means no harm. At that point, she starts to focus all of her negativity towards the green monster. She says horrible things to him, and that harms him physically until he dies. She might have had the discovery of the century, this little green monster, but was guided by fear, and that fear turned into hatred. You can interpret this as you want. I think this represents all the people that are discriminated because they look different, but I think also that it's about how men are criticized often for not being open with our feelings, but when we do open up, people more often than not use that information against us for no real reason. You can read this as a pledge to treat with care people that open up their feelings to you, but you can also interpret this as the story telling you not to open up at all, or at least that you have to be very careful about who do you open up with. I think this is extremely smart, this way to tell stories, because it's good for the story to have a moral, but often just to show up the people in the story, the characters doing the right thing, it just doesn't click with the audience. Maybe because we are like, oh yeah, we know the rules, we know what is good and what is right. We know that they want us to eat our vegetables and listen to adults when they speak, but that might even spark a little recklessness, like to hell with authority, to hell with the boss. So showing people not learning the lessons, being straight up assholes, and led you, the reader, to be frustrated with them, that's a kind of a smart move. All of the stories in this book are filled with a certain darkness, even the ones that are a little bit funny. I mostly pointed out the ones that I love the most, but they're all good. This book is very, very solid. There's a story about a boy and a girl who are so sure they are perfect for one another that they go their separate ways to demonstrate that life will reunite them again. So years and years pass, they forget, and the next time they walk by each other, they don't remember one another. Again, Murakami uses a situation that is frustrating to teach us something like, carpe diem, seize the moment, live in the present. Let's make a stop in the last story, titled The Elephant Vanishes. Guy likes elephant. There's an elephant from Africa that is brought to the zoo, and then he is put in a warehouse because the elephant seems dangerous. And the main guy, the main character, goes to spy on the elephant, who is with a caretaker, and then for some reason the elephant becomes small and seemingly escapes. And this is a story about the balance of nature with society, about society itself, about work, about the impact of this event in this guy. So that's pretty much the book. I do really recommend it. I think this is a very, very good book. And that's it pretty much. Like, go read The Elephant Vanishes. It's really fun. It's one of the funniest and books of Haruki Murakami. So yeah, very recommended. You can get The Elephant Vanishes pretty much anywhere where good books are sold. If you want to support this podcast, or you just like cool t-shirts, or maybe some coffee mugs or art prints, we got a few digital stores where you can find all of that and more, featuring the cover artwork for this episode, inspired by The Elephant Vanishes. There will be one design for each episode release of this podcast.